Udo Erasmus, thank you so much for joining us on the Planetary News podcast today.
My pleasure.
We would love to know. It will be fun. It's been fun already. And we want to know if you have a moment of gratitude to share with us and the listeners.
Right. Well, my moment of gratitude really is very simple. I'm alive and I live here. And I make effort to live here. Live here means be in my space, feel what it feels like to be alive. And it feels so good that gratitude follows naturally.
I think that's beautiful because so many people go through day to day without checking in with themselves, without being grateful for being here, paying attention to everything that's gone wrong instead of what's gone right, everything they don't have instead of what they have, right?
Yeah, and I like doing it that way because sometimes it seems like the entire world sucks. But life is always perfect and beautiful and filled with love and filled with peace. Life loves your body unconditionally. Every moment of every day, 24/7, 365, for a whole lifetime. And that love never ends because when you're sleeping, it's looking after you. When you're thinking distracted in your thoughts, it's looking after you. Even when you hate your life, it loves you. Never asks for anything back, never takes time off, never sleeps, doesn't even have any eyelids, your life. Right? So and then you look at what it does. It does everything.
Did you always think this way?
No. No, it's a discovery and it's a work in progress. Right? Because as a child, in my mother's womb, I'm pretty sure I was in that place. Because there was no place to go, there was nothing to see. It was safe, everything was taken care of. So awareness was at rest inside in its source. And it wasn't outside at all, because there was nothing much on the outside for it to go to. But when we're born, we go out through our senses into the world, because now we have to get to know the world. And in that process, we get disconnected from our life. And we're the only creature on the planet that has to deliberately take time to get reconnected. Trees never get disconnected. And dogs, they'll go out in their senses, but they go back to their body pretty quick. And we go out and then we go into our head, go into our mind. And so we can actually live disconnected, unlike any other creature on the planet, which is why deliberate time spent being with ourselves to reconnect is really important for a life well lived.
So how did you come to that message and thought process? How did that happen for you?
Okay, we're very lucky. There's something always calling us when we get disconnected, and it starts early. When we get disconnected, there's an ache that goes with that. And you can see where my hand is, right?
Yeah, right at
it's
the
an
heart.
ache.
Yeah.
It's an ache here. Sometimes we call it loneliness. Sometimes we call it longing, restlessness, emptiness, sorrow, sadness. There's a lot of names. I got 10 pages of names. This is a specialty for me because I think this is such a cool thing. I think it's the most important conversation we don't have on this planet. Is that conversation about the thirst of the heart, which is the greatest gift we've been given other than being alive, because it will nag us. It will continue to call us home until we come home. And so I started feeling that and not being able to shake it, because what we do, usually we don't like the feeling, so we distract ourselves from it. So when I turned 17, I ran out of distractions. So I felt it all the time, and I didn't know what it was. It took me 13 years to find out what it was. And it was because I met somebody who was half my age. He said, what you're looking for is inside of you, and I can show you how to crawl inside. Crawl back inside to find it. And I didn't think somebody half my age could teach me much. I was 30. This guy was 14. But I thought, well, let's see what he's got. And if he can't show me, I'll just keep looking. And if he does, then I don't want to miss it. And then he showed me, and I thought it was all too simple, what he was showing me. But I promised that I would give it a fair chance. And I realized that if I took the time to be with myself, I wouldn't rise to the bait that had me in arguments with my wife every day. You know, whenever, let's put it this way, whenever we were together during the day, we would be in argument. And I realized when I started doing it, I got settled inside. I just became calmer inside, and I wouldn't rise to the bait. And by the time 6 months were up, I said, wow, this works. So that was 47 years ago. So I've been doing the practice for 47 years.
Is there more than just being alone with yourself to it?
Well, it's a movement of awareness. Because where your awareness goes, that's what creates your reality. That's what creates your perception. And then your perception becomes your reality. Whatever you pay attention to, you get good at it. You get to know it, right? If you spend a lot of time being angry, you become a specialist in being angry, right? But what if you want peace? What if you want to feel love? All of them exist in us. Everything that's possible for a human being exists already within us. So what do you want to focus on? And focus is about the one place where we have choice, right? We don't make the earth turn, and we don't make the grass grow, and there's a lot of things we don't control. But we do have control about where we put our awareness. And maybe as kids, we don't even have control of that because we don't know of all of the possibilities. But these days, we live in a world where the possibilities are known. So you're in a way, you have the chance to choose the kind of life you want to live, at least in this part of the world. Not every part of the world, but this part of the world.
I think sometimes not knowing all the possibilities can keep you safer than knowing the possibilities, because it keeps you focused on what you know and there's less choices to make, and maybe you could stay more positive.
Right, but what if all you know is negative because you grew up in a negative situation and you don't know that it's possible to have a better life?
True.
So from that perspective, I'd rather know all the bad that's possible and all the good that's possible, and then have the ability to choose how because I'm responsible for my life, right? And I do have choice, and being present in the beauty of existence is one of the choices I have, and frankly, it's always the one that works the very, very, very best. Right? And I still have to do all the things I do in the world, but I can do them taking myself with me, or I can do it and leave myself behind.
So there's a lot of people that are listening that are probably going to think, well, I don't have choices.
What the hell is he talking about?
Yeah, what's he talking about? Like, I don't have choices. I have to do these things. Otherwise, XXXY. Like, I have to do this. I don't have choice. How do I become more aware of what's going inside of me when I have so many things on the external pulling at me in different directions? What can you tell those people about, or how can they become more focused on becoming more aware of what's going on, and that they do actually have choices that they can be making?
Well, the really beautiful thing is that you can be present inside and outside at the same time. Just because you have something on the outside to deal with doesn't mean you have to not be present in your own life. In fact, if you're present in your own life, you bring much more to the situation. And you actually are able to deal with situations much better. Because then you can also tell what needs to be addressed and what's trivial. But if you're not present, if you're not present in your own space while living in the world, then you're just going to be pushed and pulled by everything that's going on.
So do we just sit down and meditate and breathe, and that's how we bring more focus? Give 5 minutes or 10 minutes or an hour or whatever time you can, that you actually, just like you take time for breakfast and you take time to go to the bathroom, take time to be by yourself and do absolutely nothing except breathe. And breathe, because you don't want to stop that, right? But do nothing. Shut off all your distractions and be there for yourself. And we do very little of that. We do a lot of doing
and very little being. But in being, you discover everything. And in doing, you become smaller and smaller. And in doing, you burn out. And we live in a burnout world because everybody says, do more, do more, do more. All the motivational speakers, that they all talk like that. And then they say, work hard and play hard. But if you want a balanced life, then you got to add one more thing to it. Do nothing hard. Right? Because the do-do gets you into do-do. aside from getting you into do-do, the do-do gets you into burnout.
And for many, the do nothing is hard to do, right? Or spending time by yourself at the beginning.
Yeah.
2 minutes of meditation could be torturous for people because we are not used to known distractions, especially in today's world.
Yeah, we're addicted. Well, we're addicted to change and addicted to activity. But when I started, I was like that too. I mean, I had so much going on in my mind. I couldn't sit still for 10 minutes. I was told I should do an hour. I couldn't sit still that long. I did 5 or 10 minutes. And then just after 5 or 10 minutes, wow, we argued about that? How trivial. Right? And then when I recognized that, just because I got a little bit different perspective, because I had a little bit different experience of myself, then I started, and then it took me time to settle down. And in that sense, doing nothing is the hardest work. But when you do nothing, you become everything because you become aware of everything. And everything is in you. Usually we live in the world of the physical, but your life is energy. So it's not physical and it weighs nothing, but it runs everything. And because it's unconditional love, don't you think it might be a good idea maybe to know it a little better? And then behind that is awareness, and awareness fills the entire universe. It's in you, but it's your connection to everything. And deeper you go, more incredible the whole story becomes.
And I think that deepens your relationship with other people. It allows you to be more determined, to make better choices, to have more discipline, and to really, coming back to what we talked about, creating the world, creating the life that we want to have. Right.
Yeah, it's almost like it doesn't make you more disciplined. It's that the choices become easier to make because you're already more fulfilled. When you think that you have to eat this donut in order to feel fulfilled, because you don't know what fulfillment is because you don't spend any time in it, then the donut becomes a lot more important than it actually is. But when you know how to be fulfilled, then you're free to really make choices. And then they're not that hard. And if you have to have habits you need to change, it's not that hard to change a habit when you feel inspired about being alive. Because inspiration takes you out of your mental ruts. It's better at it than psychedelics. Psychedelics will do that too, but only for a few hours. Right? And we're talking about living a whole life lit up from within.
So talking about being lit up, something that springs to mind is just feeling sexy. And I know that you wrote the book on total sexy health, the 8 key parts designed by nature. Let's talk a minute about that word sexy and what it means to you, because some people will think of the word sexy and it might be skinny or it might be swimsuit model, but that's not, in terms of everything else we've just been talking about, it's so much more than that, right?
Right. Well, what is sexy? First of all, say why. I mean, why would I call it the book on total sexy health? Right? And there are people who argue with me still. Why sexy? Sexy is the power word. In the world we live in, sexy is the power word. Everything is sold by sexy. Right? And we use it much more broadly than just about the sexual act. So we talk about sexy technology, and sexy lines in art. And
sexy car.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, all of that, right? Because it's the power word. But what is sexy actually when it comes to human beings? It's about being full on. It's about being present. anything that makes you more present makes you more sexy. And I like the idea that I can get to use the word sexy that is being used to sell you all kinds of garbage and use sexy to sell people on themselves. Because that's what I'm trying to do. If people knew, if 8 billion people knew how incredibly beautiful it is to be alive, even when you're hungry, even when you don't have a place, if you understood that, you could have an amazing life. Not everybody's going to have a big house, ever. But everyone is filled with light, is filled with joy, is filled with peace, is filled with love. And every human being on the planet, no matter what their external situation is, has that built into them, came loaded into the world with that. And for whatever you're going to accomplish on the outside, maybe in the end, the most important thing is that you fully enjoyed all of your being while you were here.
And so it all has to come from within. And that's what it sounds like, awareness, creating focus.
Yeah, it doesn't have to come from within. You have to go within to discover it already being there. Is that still my phone?
Okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's okay. So, I mean, we're talking all the time about becoming healthier, helping people improve their quality of life through nutrition and fitness. We're talking about improving health all the time. And so it sounds like being aware of what's inside of us is going to make it easier for us to experience the perfect levels of health, right?
Yeah, I would say it this way. Awareness, which is the foundation of everything, never gets sick. Never gets sick, can't get sick. It's unformed. It's formless, undifferentiated, never gets sick, never even die, can't even die, right? It's nice to have something like that, when your knee hurts or whatever, right? And the energy that keeps you alive, that is life, that maybe you call sunlight, but depends on whether you go science, then you call it sunlight. If you go religion, you call it the master. That energy never gets sick, never dies. So there you have something, I call that perfect health. So you have perfect health in the energy that makes you alive. And then whatever goes wrong with your body, that energy is also what heals what's wrong with your body. And more and more, we're recognizing that energy is really the healer. Life is the healer. Energy is the healer. And then whatever improves the flow of energy in your body, and that's why exercise is important, and why omega-3s are important, because they're high energy foods. Why they have so much benefit to healing is because they improve the energy flow in the body, and the energy using the genetic program makes all the changes that need to be made in order to do the healing.
And so what are the other key parts designed by nature that you talk about in this book? I assume awareness is one of them. Yeah.
Internal awareness is number one. So that's the deep, deep, deep. So you're not in your body. You're like out of the body, but not out there, out of the body. But you're not in the physical. So internal awareness, and there's nothing in it. That's the container for everything. Second is life energy. That's your power, basically. And you can see that power in action, but you can also tap into that power by bringing your awareness inside, and you can see it as light in you. If you look into the dark, like when you close your eyes in a dark room, you see darkness, basically, right? Yeah. But if you sit in that darkness long enough, you'll discover that there's light in that darkness. And that light is you. That light is life, because you are life. You're actually not the body. Right. That's why you call it my body, because I'm the owner. I'm not the body, right? So that life, you can see it, you can hear it, you can feel it, and you can taste it. And there's ways of doing that. So life is the second part. Third one is inspiration, and that's just the extension of the energy. Inspiration. What's really nice about that, you can't be depressed and inspired at the same time. So if you have a choice, if I have a choice, I'd rather be inspired. Inspiration takes you out of the thinking ruts that you get stuck in, and it makes whatever changes you need to make easier to make. And now you're making them because your life is worth living. You know, if your life is not worth living, why would you make any changes? It's all too much work. And if your life is not worth living enough, people kill themselves. Right? Mm-hmm. But when you're excited to be alive and you're really enjoying it, then you're going to do whatever it takes to extend your time on earth in whatever way you can. Right? And it's not that hard because there's a reason why it makes sense to do it.
What if you're stuck in that rut and you're concentrating on the negative and you don't know if there's really a reason to live other than things outside of you? Where does that inspiration come from? How do you get it? It doesn't always just show up for everybody at the right time, or there wouldn't maybe be a suicide rate, right?
Right. So if I'm in that place, then it becomes your job to be a model of inspiration for me, and to speak to me from inspiration, and to speak to me from possibility, and to speak to me about how incredible something in me is that maybe I'm not looking at. Because it's already, even if I'm suicidally depressed, and I have been in that place, that light was still in me. But I wasn't looking at the light. I was looking at stupid ideas in my head about stupid things that in most cases are not even that important. And maybe if it was something that was really important, even if something really seriously negative happens, that light in me doesn't blink. That light in me is still there. So what does it take then? Is my question. What does it take then for me to be with the light at the same time I'm dealing with the disaster? And that takes a little practice. But it's worth it because it makes life so good. So that's inspiration. That's number 3. Number 4 is the body. And that's where most people focus health. Let me go back. Awareness is beyond health. Life energy is perfect health. Excuse me. Inspiration is, I call it mental health 1. And there's two parts to the mind. I'll get there in a second. Then the body is physical health, and food and fitness. We're talking about with fitness is exercise and rest, and recovery and healing, and sleep. And with food is 50 essential nutrients, whole foods, plant-based as the foundation, because the research is very clear. You want the longest life and the best health, you do it on a whole food, plant-based diet plus the B12 supplement. Yeah, research is very clear now. So you can't even argue. It's also better for the planet. So that's number 4. And then digestion is really important in that as well. So I work with digestive enzymes, probiotics, and fiber, because they work outside the body, inside the digestive tract. Very important for health, even though they're not essential nutrients. And then number 5 is, I call it survival smarts. That's mine too. And that means, number 1, having the calmness that comes from being present in your own life, and the courage and the confidence that come from that. And number 2, learning the skills of survival for the kinds of things that can happen in where you live, and to whatever extent you can, preempting your learning of those rather than waiting to learn them until you're, what do they call it, up to your ass in alligators? Right? So it's better that you know survival skills, not before you need them. Right. So it's a good idea to invest in, like I live in a place where there's a possibility of earthquakes. So what do you need to do? What do you do? Or if you live in a place that gets floods, or if you get in a place for hurricanes, what do you do to preemptively to create a situation that when the doo-doos hits the fan, you have already got your protections in place. And that's important. Yeah. Right?
It sounds like a lot of this needs to be done preemptively. Because when you're in that dark space to find your inspiration or to sit alone with yourself, that's not, you need to build these muscles beforehand, like we need to make an effort to eat and live actively, right? Right.
In fact, part of the reason why that got me thinking, I was born during the Second World War. So I was a refugee child when I was not yet 3. And so I got the notion, and in Europe, this is in Europe. I was in Poland, part of Germany at the time, and the idea was that came to me was, well, there must be a way that people can live in harmony, and I'm going to find out how. That's started for me when I was 6 years old. We tend to be on this side of the Atlantic Ocean. We tend to be pretty cavalier about that because we've never really had a war. And so, and my buddies, when we were kids in the 60s, they'd laugh about wars and let's start a war and stuff. And I'd get really mad. I said, that's not funny. And they say, why are you so heavy? I said, because I've been through one. Right? So we play war, and because we don't really understand how bad it gets and what the consequences are. And so when we have the luxury to develop ourselves, to be fully present, and to be ready for whatever kinds of crises come. If we don't do that, then it could just get a lot worse. And the point is that when you do it that way, when you do it preemptively, you have the best experience of life too. Right? So it's not only let's just get prepared for when it gets really bad, but the truth is, why aren't we chasing the carrot of the best life?
And it's much easier to do it in advance than having to go and reverse any issues that may have come about afterwards.
Yeah. When I was in the Rotary Club at one point, and what they would say is it takes $1 to teach peace. It takes $10 to prevent wars, and it takes $1,000 to clean up the mess when you don't do either of them. Right? And that's pretty much, I think that applies not just to war, it applies to any of our disasters. Right? So that's number 5 was survival skills.
Sorry, before you go on, do you think that a lot of these steps that you're mentioning were more part of life, I'd say, in the last century and during the First and Second World War, and now in our fast-paced society where we have computers and phones and everything's ringing and we're moving and we are not, most of us, alone with ourselves very often or able to find awareness and all these other things. Do you feel as if the Second World War were to happen now in this day and age, especially with our behaviors in North America, that the survival rate would have been a lot lower because people wouldn't have had the inspiration and had the will and had the skills to be able to make sure they survived the way so many people did during the Second World War?
No, I would say more people survived during the Second World War, even though they didn't, they also didn't pre-plan and be ready for it. But we're even less ready because we're still just playing around. Most of what we do is just about entertainment and distractions and I'm talking about stuff that's a little more serious than that. So I think we would do worse at this point in the same situation of the Second War. And the Second War was really bad. I mean, 100 million people got seriously traumatized. 40 million people got killed. And the whole thing is unnecessary because the core of our existence is based in peace. But we're not doing the homework and we're not connecting to that peace. And so we're living in reaction to everything. And, you know, when you live in reaction, then whatever's going on the outside, it just keeps being amplified. And at some point you react to something more aggressively, and then really violently, and then you get guns, and then you get cannons, and then you get atom bombs, right? Just because, why? And that's the game we're playing in the world, because we're not doing our homework. We're not appreciating what life is, either in ourselves and then secondarily in others, right? It all starts with lack of appreciation for ourselves. Is because I can't make you appreciate yourself, but I can appreciate myself. So from that, everything changes. If I live in the fullness of my life, I become an influence in that direction for other people as well. So, yeah.
There's a lot of internal work that people need to start doing if they haven't started yet, or they need to continue doing to get deeper, dig deeper into their own body and soul to really be able to develop these patterns of gratitude and appreciation and awareness, and being able to help themselves make better choices moving forward to get the best out of their lives. If there was one thing that you could focus in on as being the most important step to begin to help our listeners, what would that step be?
Wow. Well, there are a couple ways. The way it started for me actually was I took a psychedelic trip, and that opened the door, because what psychedelics do is they bring you in. They bring you in, and you experience a little more intensely what it feels like to be alive. And then after 2 hours or 4 hours or 6 hours, it's over. So for me, was a good door opener. And the other one is always something that gets you alone. Voluntary solitude. But do it not with, oh God, I got to do it. But just get a little closer to yourself, because you will actually like what you discover. And then it becomes easier. But, when it's just an idea, oh, I've never done that, and oh God, maybe if I see myself, I'm really going to be even more evil than I think I already am, and that's all head trips, right? But when you can actually just relax out of it, even beer sometimes will do that, right? Because you just get a little bit, you put your crazy, overactive brain to sleep, even though it's poison and there's side effects, right? But you put your brain to sleep a little bit, and then you relax a little more, and then you laugh a little more, and then you have a little more fun, because we're so strung out on our thinking. And so anything we do that gets us out of our head, gets us a little closer to our heart, gets us a little closer to our being, anything that'll do it. And I mean, for some people it's music. For some people it's dancing. I read something that just yesterday that dancing is really good for health. So I put it on I was on a Facebook, right? So I shared it on Facebook because I really liked it, right? It was a picture of the brain, and it just said, dancing is good for health. It's already been shared 218 times.
Yeah.
And I said, dancing alone is okay too, right? Because because most people think dancing is you grab somebody and then you shoot them around, right? But and so it's got 218 shares. So maybe anything like that gets you, stretching, yoga, right? Physical stuff that just pulls you into your body a little more. Any of that is helpful.
Yeah, I know for me personally, going for a long run does a lot of that for me. It lets me get my mind clear and focus on myself internally. And I know that it makes me a better person when I finish that run, because I've been told that I behave a little differently after the fact. So,
and there's we can't tell you who told you that.
No, can't do that. But what we're saying basically is find something that interests you, that allows you the opportunity to get to be by yourself so you could enjoy yourself and allow yourself to bring a little more awareness to your own personal self.
Go for a walk in a park.
Yeah.
And pet a dog.
Right. There's a lot of
I mean, there's so many ways to do it. So many ways to do it.
Yeah. And I know you didn't yet talk about the 7th and 8th key, and I think we should keep that because you've been gracious enough to give our listeners a free copy of the book on total sexy health and the course that goes with that. So instead of us sharing the last 2 now, we could just tease them with it.
Yeah. Tease them. Okay, we only actually we tease them a little more than that because I've only given you 5 and there's 8.
Oh, there
the
you
other
go.
3.
There you go. And
the other 3, you just have to go get the free book.
That's it. And so we'll put a link to that free book in our show notes at planttrainers.com.
Okay.
If people wanted to reach out and connect with you or find you on social media, where would be a good place for them to go?
Well, UdoErasmus.com. That's where all the courses and the stuff that we're talking about is. And udoschoice.com is the website that my products are on. And I'm on Facebook and I'm on Instagram and I'm not hard to find. I'm on Google.
That's great. So we'll put links to all of your sites and for people to download their copy of the book on total sexy health. Yeah. And Udo, we really appreciate you taking your time out of your day to spend with us. This is a very fascinating conversation and definitely not the direction that I was expecting it to go.
Okay. I do have one more question before we do wrap it up.
Sure.
Yeah.
What effect do you think that your steps have on the physical body and the ability to thrive in wellness?
And you're talking about physical wellness.
Physical wellness.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay, I'm 77 and I have no aches and pains in my body. I did when I was 38. I had arthritis in my knees. It was beginning. So whenever I bent my knees and put a little tension on them by bending them, they hurt. I have nothing now. And where does that come from? It comes from, but it began with the practice. It began with the psychedelic to blow the door open because I had a pretty tight life coming out of the war and being a war baby. I rewrote my entire life, and I rewrote it from the experiences that I go into when I recognize how loved I am by life, like everybody is. And so I rewrote it from that perspective instead of the perspective of my experiences in the world I was born into. See, it's a really cool thing that, you could have been traumatized and you could have been, raped and you could have been kidnapped and you could have been tortured and you could have been abused. And even though all of those things that should have never happened to you, there's something in you that through all your dramas and all your traumas took perfect care of you. Get to know that. There's a life waiting for you to have. Literally, it's waiting for you to come home. And so my deal is I'm 77 because I got into that and started feeling good about being alive. I started making changes. Then I got poisoned by pesticides. That rubbed my nose into how important it is to not just do anything because I was pretty sloppy. It's a long story. That's for another time. But the doctors couldn't help me, and then I started really focusing on the physical parts of it too. But I was already enjoying my life, so making the changes was not that difficult. I didn't begin plant-based. I began the same way everybody began, but just by paying attention to my own body. I ended up plant-based, mostly raw, right? And without any aches and pains at 77.
That's awesome.
I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Right?
It definitely is. It definitely is. Again, thank you so much for joining us today on the Plant Trainers podcast. I think that your story of inspiration here and what we need to do and work within ourselves to be comfortable being alone with ourselves is such a great first step for many of the listeners who are not comfortable doing that yet or have left that comfort for a long time. And I'm sure people are going to be thinking about getting back into that. Thank you for what you do.
Yeah. Yeah, and do your psychedelics. If you're going to do them in a safe place under supervision. These are not toys.
Yeah. They're not toys, no.
They're not toys. But spend time alone. You are much more beautiful than you even ever know. And I'm still more beautiful than I know because it's a work in progress. I've never seen the bottom of that journey. It's the only growth journey that has no side effects, where it only gets better and there are no side effects.
Thank you.